constants in there is going to be the take with over time, the amount of time that it spends to get things. And when I see that map in conjunction with that concept, I see that map shifting to other places. That's an indication to me that there's other things going on too over time, and not just exploring other areas. I see it as an indicator that the data is indicative of populations that are starting to get more difficult to tap into. So I'm open to a conversation about where we go to these other things. I do struggle with the commercialization, and I'm not likely to walk out of here today without voting for anything short of putting at a minimum a temporary halt on collection of reptiles until we better understand what's really going on. I have probably more questions today than I did before, maybe, I don't know.
Commissioner Johnston.
I guess one of the biggest things that sticks in my mind is even if we took action today to ban commercial collection of reptiles, I don't believe it solves a problem that we have, which is just the sheer number of pitfall traps that are out on the landscape. That problem is there and exists and will continue to have an impact on wildlife. Whether you do nothing today or you ban commercial collection today, and those traps are there, and until they're removed, they're going to continue to have an impact. So that's the one thing that sticks in my mind. And at the same time, I think if there wasn't the ability to sell reptiles commercially, those pitfall traps wouldn't be there. So I feel like I'm in this chicken and the egg type situation in which there's a problem out of the landscape, and I'm not so certain how to address it. But it's a difficult situation, and I don't know what the solution is. I don't think it's going to be an easy one, but I don't think coming out and just banning commercial collection solves that problem that exists. So my view would be to direct the department to develop some recommendations that set seasons limits and some parameters that would give the department and this commission comfort that it could continue but not have a negative impact. And as part of that, I think we have to try to figure out what do we do about the number of pitfall traps that are out there now. What do we do about those? I don't know what we can. I mean, sheer numbers, I've heard things about, just the number of man hours it would take to go out and try to address them is substantial.
I had Commissioner McNinch first.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, that's crossed my mind. We've got these pitfalls. Those are going to exist for a while. That's all there is to it. So the one thing that we do control is the lawful take at this point in time, and that's where I'm at. And I know that nothing's going to come out of here that actually prohibits it. I guess I correct my statements by saying that that's the direction that I would prefer to go, would be to move forward with those, halting, the commercial collection of reptiles until we get a better feel, until we can get these other things, these other variables taken care of. Because those pitfall traps are a big deal, and quite frankly, they're contributing to the problem. There's no doubt about it in my mind. Obviously they are. So I just see that this is the one area that we control, and I think that that's just where I keep falling. I just don't. I'm concerned the damage is already done. I know damage is done, and I don't know at what point we cross that line and how close we are to it. I'm not sure. But the public also made a comment about being conservative about our approach on that, and that's where I'm falling. I'd rather take my chances down that path than regretting not doing something.
Thank you, Commissioner McNinch. And I've got one quick thing before I go to Commissioner Hubbs. At the same thing, sitting here thinking about these pitfall traps that are out there, I wouldn't even be against if we set up areas where we know these are, we completely close the season there to people working there until those are removed. And I don't know how we could go about doing that, because once again, we're penalizing people for something that someone did illegally, but at the same time, the losses that we're taking in those pitfall traps versus the people taking them legally, I'll bet has got to be 10 or 20-fold over what we lose in those pitfall traps to what's actually taken. And then that's just throwing numbers out there. That's not even probably close to what it is realistically. And I'm going to go to Commissioner Hubbs, but I did have a question for Ms. Newmark. As far as the neighboring states, what are the regulations? I've had in the presentation, there was where Nevada's unregulated. What are the neighboring states doing? Do you know? Are they completely closed to collection? Or are they highly regulated? I mean, are there some options that we could look at to maybe mirror some of our neighboring states? Or
For the record, Jennifer Newmark with NDOW, all of our neighboring states completely prohibit it, with the exception of Idaho that has one collector that's permitted. He's allowed to collect on one piece of property, and he's basically allowed to collect one reptile, and it's a rattlesnake species, so he's basically like, clearing dangerous wildlife.
so we're basically the free-for-all for all
Yes.
neighboring states.
Yes, that is true.
Thank you, Ms. Newmark. Commissioner Hubbs.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point of budget. That actually came up, Chairman Wallace, right before you talked to me, because I think we are somewhat of a sink state. People are coming into our state because it has been a free-for-all too. And I can definitely see the attraction there. Our state attracts a lot of people from all over the nation because we let things go on in other areas as well. But what I was going to say is, I just want to highlight again too, the 26 species of conservation priority that was noted by Ms. Newmark today. So 26 of them we know right now as we sit here are species of conservation priority, and they're subject to a free-for-all commercial policy at this time. And I just wanted to note that.
Thank you, Commissioner Hubbs. Commissioner Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there any way that we can ask for the data from our neighboring states, Mr. Mark, regarding their illegal activity? Are they keeping track of it so that we can compare it to what we're seeing here in Nevada, where we do have legal collection available?
Are you asking, this is Jennifer Newmark for the record, are you asking for like law enforcement data from neighboring states? Because
Biological or law enforcement data that would be quantified or described as illegal activity that's being officially kept by the Department of Wildlife in neighboring states, whether it's law enforcement or biological folks.
I think from Arizona's perspective, they do have some law enforcement cases that we could ask them about. If you're asking for wildlife trends on their species, we could talk to those biologists. Certainly, our neighboring states have expressed their concern to us about our legal activities here being a source of issue for them.
And in your opinion, do you think that our legality of having this prevents these neighboring states from having illegal activity? Or are they saying they don't have any, and it's, we're the bad boys, as we are in Nevada most of the time?
From my understanding of what our neighboring states have expressed to us, there is concern that our legality of it provides opportunity for illegal activity in their states.
Thank you.
Commissioner Johnston.
Going back to the PowerPoint, to hold the commercial collection license in Nevada, you have to be a Nevada resident. And we only have 7 or 8 licensed commercial collectors. So is the problem those with commercial collection licenses, or the problem those without licenses that are collecting illegally, both in Nevada and outside in Nevada? And that, to me, is a huge issue, and I think it goes back to the earlier statement, ban the commercial collection now. So if people are putting all the pitfall traps out there now without a permit and doing it all illegally inside and outside the state of Nevada, closing down the Bentz family is not going to address the problem that we're seeing.
Chairman.
Commissioner Young.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Johnson on that. That's the point I was trying to make is, we've got 5 to 8, 7 people that are active. I don't know how active everybody is in those generations. They can't meet the problem of all the illegal activity. It just isn't possible from my experience in law enforcement. And with all due respect to everybody up here, when they talk about commercialization, you know how I feel about these out-of-state elk guides that are coming in here and charging $100,000 per tag and using unlimited trail cams. There's a parallel there, and I just think we need to be careful about using that. They make a living at it, okay? I don't think they're making anywhere close to what some of these guys that are coming here from out of state are doing elsewhere. And I think we need to think about people and human beings that are, I'm not saying that we're wrong here in regulating. I'm just saying let's be careful. And maybe there's a way that we can work together and figure out something that's a little bit better than, I don't like rattlesnakes. I hope they catch every darn one of them in the state and kill them bastards. Kill every one of them. I've had near misses with them several times out there hunting. So kill them all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Young. Commissioner Hubbs?
I just wanted to bring up another point. I mean, I think there is an issue with some out-of-state draw to our state right now because of the commercialization. And I wouldn't go so far as to say that we can't disentangle. I mean, we can't take away the testimony that we heard today, in which we heard some of our local commercial permittees telling us that there are traps that they're using of that nature to catch scorpions. So, I mean, I don't think we have enough information right now to disentangle who's the one out there doing it. I mean, I think we control the area, we remove those types of devices as best we can, and we take away the pool to our state, even if it's temporarily, to understand better what's going on in that area, if we need to do it by area. I certainly think we should do it by species. I mean, we shouldn't put, we have 26 species of concern. I mean, why would we risk that for our state? I mean, why take it to the next level where we're fighting, a petition to list a species? I mean, now's the time to act. Now's the time to do it versus when we're fighting a petition and wondering how that happened.
Thank you, Commissioner Hubbs. Director Wasley?
Thank you, Chairman Wallace. I just want to provide some food for thought as we consider possible regulations for the department. We look and we assume that we have 8 collectors right now, that $250 mark, and we saw this $2,000 annually. And even if we use that as the non-federal portion to garner federal aid dollars, and we ramp that up to $8,000 annually, some of these regulations that we're possibly talking about have a significant enforcement component to them. As you contemplate some of the enforcement components, realize that they will require subsidization from sportsmen's dollars, and just be aware of the cost and where that money is going to come from to, I guess, fund that enforcement.
Thank you, Director Wasley. Further comments or questions from the commission? Do we have any specific action we're looking to take today, or is this something we want to hear more about? Commissioner McNinch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, I'll say it again. I don't take this lightly. I know the repercussions of the decisions up here are going to affect somebody. It's either going to affect, from what I'm perceiving, probably going to affect you guys in some way. So I don't take it lightly. My preference is that we're looking at 2 or 3. I mean, it's just where I'm at right now. I'm not willing to roll the dice on these. The awareness that I feel like I've been given is the appreciate what Commissioner Hubbs said. 26 species. We have wonderful diversity. It's the most diverse in the country, I think, is what is what was said at a previous meeting. But I'm not willing to roll the dice on this. I feel like it's significant. I feel like we're going to be asking the department to put a tremendous amount of effort into setting up a collection process. I don't know if we'd be able to raise the fees high enough to fund, oversight of a program. I just don't know that so I see potential impacts there. I'm willing to talk about it and vet it out in that sense, but I'm still struggling with the concept. I do appreciate your comment, Chairman Wallace, about closing the zone. I do appreciate that, and I can see where that would have a lot of benefits. So, from that standpoint. But right now, I'm still having a hard time coming off of a permanent regulation that just says we're not doing this. They're heading that way at some point in the future. I don't know how I don't know. It just feels like it's where we need to go. It feels to me like the best option.
Commissioner Hobbs.
Just on, going off of Commissioner McNinch's comment about the zones and Chairman Wallace's comments too, it came back to me that we inadvertently found out about those traps, and we being the department, from what I remember. So maybe Ms. Newmark can talk with us more about zones that we potentially might exist that we have no idea are even there at this time. I just remember there being a piece about the pitfall traps and how we actually found them or came upon them.
For the record, Jennifer Newmark, Department of Wildlife. My understanding, and this is from just what I've been told from my staff, is that we did just happen upon them. It was actually a BLM crew, or it might have been Fish and Wildlife, a federal crew who came across a large number of those traps. And so we know of 700, but there could be more out there. I don't have that personal knowledge of where every trap is. Does that answer your question?
Yes, so going by a zone may not curb the problem that we're trying to address. There could be other zones of traps of this nature. Maybe there's not, maybe there is, but it's unknown at this time. So it wouldn't help those areas if they exist.
Correct. And thinking about those pitfall traps too, it's understanding that the people who are using those traps for scorpions are not collecting reptiles out of them. We need to continue to think about them being additive to the numbers that are being collected. So each year those traps are collecting animals, and it's an additive number to the ones that are reported as being collected and sold for commercial purposes.
Commissioner Young.
Chairman Mike Cab in Clark County wanted to know if we could ask some of the licensed collectors if they know the location of the majority of the pitfall traps that are illegal, and have the department ever asked for the specifics of those? And could you provide them if you were asked?
Thank you for asking. It's my understanding, I personally have no can traps anywhere, period. Like the packet said, I've collected every one of the lizards I've ever collected with the noose. I have one here if you want to see it. It's about this long, extends out to about 9.5, 10 feet. Yes, I do collect that, and part of the problem we have with the biology department is that, having never been asked any of this, like what you just asked today, never asked. I've never been asked any time have I ever seen a desert tortoise in place. Have I ever seen a canned unit anywhere? Have I ever seen a lead hole trap anywhere? I've never been asked anything about what I'm doing in the field. If I was simply asked, have I seen a can trap north of highway whatever, I could say, yes, I have. You know exactly where it is. I have a GPS with me. I can give you the exact coordinate for that. I have never been asked. I've been never made aware of it. It was my understanding that they weren't illegal traps, that they're only against our policy for us being able to use them. So I have no concern with them, much like I don't have concern about anybody parked out in the desert that's doing whatever he's doing, as long as he's not shooting game that he's not supposed to be shooting, because that I turn in. But it was my understanding that them being used as scorpion traps, had no idea the numbers that were out there, had no idea you were having problems with them, had no idea they were being unkept, whatever it is that you're having issues with, because no one asked me. I am literally, when I say I'm out there every day, I am. I'm dressed like this because I had to come from there to be here. If you want to know what's going on in Churchill County, ask me. If you want to know what's going on in my county, ask me. If you want to know what goes on in Esmeralda County, ask me. It's there for you. The reason why my data is so different than the rest of it is because I do it constantly. I do it all the time. My data doesn't reflect any of the stuff they suggested to you here today. My data will show you the exact thing I'm telling you, where all of my changes, and I have no additional effort. Those numbers, I don't know how I can catch 13 of them in 10 minutes. I can catch 13 of them in 4 minutes. That paper you saw today, that was collected this year. That's not 3 years ago. That's the same road, the same little piece of road that I've run my entire life. But since that 20 years that I've told you about, it's the exact same road. I do it 12, 14 times a year, every year. That's the number that was produced there this year, after all that collected. There's no cam traps on that road. There's nothing on that road. That road's an abandoned highway. What used to be highway. When you're saying additive, she was asking me about additive, about just highway depth. What do I see in highway depth? What do I see in UTV depth? What do I see in ATV depth? I could be asked anything. I have not been asked anything. Like it has no value. And I do not understand that. I don't understand the difficulties that are being presented to you guys today. It seems to me like if you wanted this information, you could ask them to ask us. Simply ask me and I can provide information. I have not been ever asked for any information about any of it. I've been given species of reptiles that I never asked for, where I just added on my permit. I have to ask for a specific one. I've asked for it to be unchanged. I've had ones added to it. I've had species of amphibians added to my stuff. I've had all kinds of changes done to my permit, all without my request. Mine has been the same over and over again. Please renew it without changes. But none of those times have they ever asked me any of this. If you ask me if I see something, I can tell you exactly where I saw it. Your problem would be resolved. You would know exactly the size of the zone. You would know where the deaths would be coming from outside UTV users. You would know anything you want to know, and I guarantee you there's more death by UTV than there is by anything you're seeing in cam traps, not just rodents. All the mammals that you deal with, all being affected by that stuff. Birds as well, all reptiles, amphibians not so much. Amphibians aren't usually out on decent enough days for them to be out when the same human population wants to be out. But with that exception, probably pretty much everything you deal with in wildlife has been affected drastically by that change. Never been asked. These little roads that didn't ever used to have them on, you ever see them on there now? Nothing. There's never been the issue from the biology department or from wildlife diversity when it was switched into that phase of things to ask any of this information. If you ask me, I can help you. Thank you. I hope that answers.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question, Commissioner Young?
Yes, and my own comment is, listening to this is that the reason I asked the question is normally we as a department collect data from those that are out in the field that we either license or whether they're outfitter or hunter. I've been doing the questionnaire for as long as I can remember when they first stopped issuing the tags over the counter. I believe they started that not too long after that. And I think in fundamental fairness, we should have been, this issue suddenly appears by accident almost. And I understand Dave's passion, I totally get it and agree. But there's a flip side to that. If it was, we weren't doing our job as an agency by not collecting it from people that we've been issuing a license to for a number of years. It's just basic biology 101. They should be asked for their information just like everybody else that's out there in the field. I think it's important that we collect all that data over a long, somewhat of a period, more than just one field trip to Armagosa Valley. Now, we have a biologist that has been working on it, and I trust her that she's providing good data, but I do agree that they should have probably been asked a question or two to hit them. So, that's all I have to say.
Commissioner McNinch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, with that in mind, Jen, I've got a question for you. When the State Wildlife Action Plan was put together, how did we identify that we had 26 species of reptiles that are of conservation priority?
For the record, this is Jennifer Newmark. During the Wildlife Action Plan development, we looked at several factors with species. We did look at trend in the species, and we also looked at threats to the species. And so commercial collection is an important component of those becoming species of conservation priority, right? So there's, certain species that are more desirable to be collected, and so they're hit harder than other species, and that did factor into whether or not they became a species of conservation priority. And then I would also just, if you don't mind, I would like to just say we do get data from the collectors. Every year they do provide us with those monthly reports. So it's not a matter of us asking for the data because we are getting data. It's a matter of what we're seeing in that data. And I just wanted to clarify that so you knew that we were getting the reports they're required to give us.
Any further questions for Ms. Newmark? Well, we have her at the
I should have
podium.
sat closer. That's right. Give me my steps in.
Commissioner Johnston.
And just, if you could confirm, Ms. Newmark, I do believe it was not only the identification of pitfall traps, but the herpetologist then went back and examined the data that had been submitted by commercial collectors in light of the knowledge of the pitfall traps. And that was what was brought to the commission's attention. It's a combination of factors, but the data has been analyzed, and that is one of the reasons why we're having this discussion today. It's not just the identification of pitfall traps, it's the data as well.
That is correct.
Mr. Stockton.
So I hate to interrupt the flow here, but I wanted to answer the question from Commissioner East. Under NRS 503-380, the legislature pretty much gave an open-ended authority to the commission. It says the commission may fix a price to be paid for commercial unprotected wildlife to be taken. And so the actual fee is set in the Nevada Administrative Code 503.095 at $250. So I don't think that would pass the legislature anymore, but it's a pretty open-ended grant to the commission of the authority to set that fee.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stockton. And sir, I'm going to tell you right now, I've already closed public comment.
But he asked a question of the commercial, you need to hear this.
Did he?
He asked a question if there was a person in here that I was already admitted that I'm the one that has can traps out there. So you should be looking at me that you want, that needed.
And that's fine. I asked him if he had finished and had his question answered, and he said yes, but if you that, then go ahead.
It's to the department's, to the commission's desire. I'm telling you, I'm the one that came up and committed, I admitted that I did the can trap, and I know all you guys, I'm looking at you, and I'm taking this really hard because I feel like I let all you guys down. Because you've looked at this, and it's not, I have a majority of can traps. I don't want to have all the can traps because that's a mechanism that people use to catch stuff with to come in these traps. I use those. The number of 700 came from me. They didn't find 700 traps. I had a department employee that come out, was trying to investigate, didn't ask, do I have can traps? He was picking and choosing and trying to find out if I would admit to the thing. And when it came down, I said, I have can traps, yeah. He says, where in Nevada? I said, they're all over in Nevada. I've got like 700 of them. I don't have 700 of them. Originally, I had 700, but when the floods come and wash cans out, they're gone. So I do have the location that you asked for. I also have that the BLM